In recent days, Korg has made some decisions that have left some of us scratching our heads. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about some of those things and then talk a little bit about where I'd like to see them head next. So if you're interested, I hope you'll stick around. I'm not going to reach very far back in the history of Korg. In fact, just go back a couple of years as I talk about this topic. But some of the more puzzling decisions that have been made, just the last few years. One puzzling decision in my mind that Korg has made recently was the handling of the Opsix. Now, the Opsix came out just a few years ago, and it was an updated modern FM synthesizer with a lot of extra features built in. I think it's a great synth. I thought it was really nice when it came out. I still like it now. But what puzzled me about it was it hadn't been out for too awful long in the big scheme of things when a software version was released, and the software version and the hardware version were being sold side by side. So I'm not entirely sure what the logic was behind that. Maybe the hardware wasn't selling well, so they thought they would try to get some more money out of the software side of it. Again, I don't really know. I'm not privy to any of that information. So that was kind of a head scratcher to me, that quick release of the software. Then followed by, not too much longer, a complete discontinuation of the Opsix, at least in the United States. It just disappeared off shelves after a massive markdown sale that took place amidst the pandemic, maybe towards the end of the pandemic. My assumption is they had a large stock sitting off the west coast of the United States on a cargo ship and needed to get rid of them, so they just marked them down, sold them out, and then that was kind of the end of the stock in the U.S. So that's been sort of a puzzle to me because I'm interested in the Opsix. I have one, so I've been watching that fairly closely. And then while we're on the topic of the Opsix, we'll just talk about the Opsix SE while we're at it, which I understand should be released anytime in North America if it's not already. Interestingly, when I checked Sweetwater over the weekend, they still didn't even have it listed for sale in any way, like a pre-order, nothing on their website. But if you go to Reverb, Korg's direct store on Reverb is selling them, and it looks like they're shipping. I didn't look too close because I can't afford one right now anyway. But that leads me to the next point. The pricing decision on the Opsix SE is a little bit puzzling to me. I mean, you're getting a quote-unquote premium key bed with aftertouch. You're getting a more robust structure, a metal body. You're getting a hard case whether you like it or not. And all of this almost tripled the price of the 37-key Opsix. So it doesn't seem like there's very much value there for the extra money you have to spend to get the SE, which is unfortunate because I have been really excited about the possibility of that keyboard. And once we knew it was reality, I was happy for a little while, and then I realized I can't buy one anyway. So that whole puzzling of the Opsix, the original generation, and then the pricing on the new one, that's all been just kind of a puzzle to me. So that's one thing. Another thing that I have been interested to kind of watch develop was the Kronos Nautilus succession plan, if you will. The Nautilus was released just a few years ago, and it felt like it did sit in the line under the Kronos, similar to like the Montage and the Modi X from Yamaha, similar to that kind of a structure. You had your top of the line flagship workstation, and then you had a step down version with some scaled back features, but still a very usable synthesizer. And then along came the discontinuation of the Kronos, which led a lot of us to think that there would be a successor coming. And recently, I did a video on Korg having officially named the Nautilus as the successor to the Kronos, which again is a kind of a puzzling move to me, just because basically the Nautilus became the workstation by default versus being a synthesizer that when it came out was good enough to be the workstation. It wasn't. It didn't top the Kronos. So, to their benefit or to their credit, I suppose, Korg has released an aftertouch version of the Nautilus. Again, at more of a premium price than I think is probably appropriate for aftertouch, for no other enhancements besides aftertouch. So again, that's my take on another puzzling situation from Korg. The next puzzle in my mind has been the handling of the Korg Prologue, and it appears that the 49-key 8-voice version is still available, I think, everywhere, at least in the US. And then the 61-key 16-voice synth appears to have disappeared from retailers over here. There have been some folks from the European side who have mentioned that there have been some issues with, I believe, the power supply, the power rating. I'm not good at all the power stuff, but there's been some kind of an issue where Korg hasn't complied, I guess, or the Prologue is no longer compliant with the standard over there. So I think possibly overseas that's been the reason that the Prologue has disappeared from shelves, but I'm not sure. The point is they had the two different versions, 49 and 61, and I don't know how well they've sold, and it has been 5 years since they were introduced, so it's probably time to do something new. But this discontinuation without having a product in place to replace it probably isn't that as uncommon as I think it is, but it doesn't seem like it should be that difficult to wait until you've got something new to roll out before you kill off something that you already have. So the handling of that transition, if there is a transition to something else, also has been a little bit of a puzzle to me. So that brings me to what would I like to see from Korg in the near future? Well, there's a few things. The first one is, and again, I'm not going to be able to afford all these, probably any of these, but I can still have a wish list, so that's the beauty of wishing. I would like to see possibly a traditional successor to the Kronos. Now, what I'm about to say may not be wildly popular, but I'm not entirely sure that releasing a workstation as we've known it since, the M1 in 1988, I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense in 2023. There's so much more work being done with computers now, and I just don't know if a workstation makes sense. It seems like, Korg, at least being on YouTube, I see a lot of the arrangers, their professional arrangers being used, so maybe that's more what people are interested in for stage performances versus a workstation. So that being said, if Korg decides to stay with a traditional workstation, I'm ready to see a true successor to the Kronos, a Kronos 2, whatever you want to call it. The next step. I'm ready to see that, to see what they've got planned. Further, I don't want to see the Prologue line or their full-size synthesizer analog line disappear. I really hope that there's a Prologue, a Mark II on the way, or a full-blown replacement, whatever that may be. I'm ready to see something new and exciting in the analog world from Korg. I think they've had a lot of success with the Minilog, the Minilog XD, the Monolog, these smaller pieces of equipment, and maybe that's where they really need to focus. But again, I had the Minilog XD for almost a year, struggled with the slimline keys or mini keys, whatever you want to call them. They're not the mini keys, but they were slimline, I think is how Korg termed them. But I struggled with those, and so the Prologue was just such a breath of fresh air when I got it. So the point is, that smaller form factor market seems like it's gone really well for Korg, but I'd like to see them stay in the larger size analog market as well. Okay, so let's talk software now. Korg has the Opsix, the ModWave, and the WaveState all available in a software format right now. They've got the Korg Legacy Collection, which is a huge suite of so many of their legacy synthesizers in software format. And by the way, if you get a chance, and if you're interested in buying that suite, they a couple times a year have an incredible sale. Check that out. Usually runs right around Christmas, and then they just had a summer sale, I think in July maybe. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested. It is a great reduction in price, and I think very worth what you get. So that aside, I would maybe like to see a software version of the Kronos. If they're not going to come out with a different hardware successor, then maybe a software version of the Kronos makes sense. I've talked about this in a video recently. Maybe that would be an option for them. I would also like to see, I'd like to see the Korg Legacy collection continue to expand. It would be neat if they would get into some of their 70s synthesizers. I think the Lambda would be a cool addition, primarily because I don't think they have anything that's a string machine already in the Legacy collection. I think a vintage string machine option would be really cool. There's all kinds of software that Korg could come up with that would continue to grow their brand, especially with so many people using software these days. So I'm interested to see if they decide to pursue that route anymore. So I'm going to circle back. I kind of jumped ahead of myself. One of the other things that I would really like to see on the hardware side from Korg would be a reissue line of, maybe they reissue the Poly 6, maybe a mono Poly, maybe they re-release, again, a Lambda, something from the late 70s, some of their mono synths from I know they did the Mini Korg, and I don't know how well that one sold, but I think they did a good job on the reproduction. So they could do those kind of things to get those synths back out. I know Behringer is a very polarizing company, but I think the major companies, Korg, Roland, Yamaha, are partially responsible for Behringer's success because of their pricing mechanisms and maybe their unwillingness to, get some of that old circuitry back out and modernize it and get it back in our hands, 40 or 50 years after it was popular. So that's just a little side road. But those are kind of the things that I think would be interesting to see from Korg coming up. I have no reason to think any of it's coming out. It's just some, again, it's just fun to speculate sometimes. So that's what this video is about. I hope you'll leave some comments below. Let me know what you think, about Korg's direction, where they're heading. What would you like to see from them next? And I really appreciate you sticking around. If you haven't had a chance, I'd love it if you would subscribe to the channel, like, comment below, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.